Hi, hello, and welcome into the WATH studios. Carl Blalock, along with a three-headed monster tonight. We've got Carl Blalock, Michael Roth, and Darius Sepna all with us here in SportsFan tonight. And we've got a pretty busy one tonight. We'll talk about the NBA Wild game. I actually watched the NBA for the first time in a little bit in a Wild game last night. Plus, we have two resident Cavs experts to talk about the Cavs as well. Then we'll talk about the NFL head coaching beginning to shift. We had one former head coach get hired as an offensive coordinator, plus one head coach get hired today. We'll talk about that. It was Frank Reich, actually, of the Carolina Panthers. And so that's actually going to tie in with our trivia question of the day. Frank Reich was the first quarterback. He threw the first passing touchdown in Carolina Panthers franchise history. He's now their coach. If the Cincinnati Bengals were to make the player who made their first passing touchdown their head coach, who would that be? We'll answer that later on in the show. But let's talk about the NBA, and I was able to catch this last night. Grizzlies and the Warriors in the Golden State. And my goodness, it was a wild game towards the end. The Grizzlies, they dominated most of the game. I wouldn't say dominated, but they were up 5 or 10 points pretty much the entirety of the game up until the last few minutes. Steph Curry leads a charge in the fourth quarter, makes a few threes, and then he gets ejected for chucking his mouth guard again. I believe he's been ejected 3 times, all 3 for throwing his mouth guard. I only remember the other one, the more famous one in the playoffs. That was in the 2016 finals, correct?
Yeah, Game 6, 2016.
Yeah, Game 6. Yes, that's right. It's interesting. It's really interesting.
It was rigged. She saw it live.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if it's for ratings or money, which definitely go hand in hand. Ratings and money. It's like the same thing. But she wasn't sure if it was for ratings or money.
I forgot that's where that copy pasta was from. But anyways, it was a wild game at the end. Jordan Poole, actually, the reason why Steph got ejected, Jordan Poole took a terrible shot, and that's what Curry was frustrated about, why he threw his mouth guard in frustration. And in the end, it ended up being Jordan Poole's redeeming himself with the game-winning layup with just a second to go on an inbound play. Really good job by the Warriors there. But, I mean, that was an entertaining NBA game. And I don't watch very many regular season NBA games.
You're too busy watching Mountain West basketball.
I am too busy watching Mountain West basketball. But the few I have caught this year have been pretty good. I caught Suns Nuggets on Christmas Day.
That was a great game. That went to overtime. Yeah.
It was up. I mean, I was up till like 1:30 in the morning watching it, but it was worth it. It was a heck of a game. And this game are really the only two I've really given my full attention to, at least towards the end of the game. But I mean, it looked good. I mean, it's really shaping up to be a really interesting season. But first, talk me through what you guys thought about the game last night.
Yeah, you picked a really good game to watch because these are, I think, these two teams represent the past and the future of the NBA. You know, the past, we're talking about the Golden State Warriors dynasty, Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, 4 championships in 8 seasons. They're taking on the young, up-and-coming Memphis Grizzlies, led by Ja Morant, who are trying to create their own dynasty and trying to knock the Warriors off the mantle. So I think it's just storyline-wise, it's always fun when you get a Warriors versus Grizzlies matchup. And I think what I saw in this game was just the Warriors, their star players just shined more than Memphis. I think, like you said, Jordan Poole with the game-winning layup. He's been nothing short of fantastic for this Warriors team, whether it's starting or coming off the bench. He's a guy who can easily get 20 points per game. You know, the Cavaliers saw that last week when the Warriors came to town and blew them out of the building. And then Klay Thompson is back. You know, you can see after going through 2 really tough knee injuries, was able to rehab and, looks like the Klay Thompson we all know and love. And then obviously, even though we got ejected, Steph Curry is the pulse of this team, and I think his 34 points were huge as well. He didn't pass a lot, only had 3 assists, but he really shined when it mattered most.
Yeah, and it's interesting seeing how important these regular season games are for the Warriors. They're still sitting in the play-in position for the Western Conference. So if you're Golden State, you need to start winning these games, because the last thing you want to do is have to play in the play-in. The Warriors know that all too well, because they lost the play-in to the Memphis Grizzlies a couple years ago. So Golden State right now sitting at the 9 seed. They are only half a game outside of the 6 seed, which is where you kind of need to be. But Golden State, 18-6 at home, only 6-18 on the road. So they need to figure out how to win away from home. They got a victory at home last night, but finding ways to get victories on the road is going to be key for Golden State to avoid the play-in and be one of those top 6 seeds, which are super valuable, because the Western Conference, there isn't much of a difference between the 4th seed and the 11 seed. I think they're separated by about 3 games right now.
It's up from the 3rd seed, actually, because right now, and every single time I look at the NBA standings, I am stunned by this. Right now, the 3rd seed, the Sacramento Kings, they're 6 games back of the Nuggets, and then you've got all the way down to the Lakers in 13th. They're
11 games out of
11
first.
games back, so that's only a 5-game gap there between 3rd and 11th in the Western Conference.
And I think also, I think the Western Conference at this point in the season is Denver's to lose. I think the way Nikola Jokic is playing, he has a case to be a 3-time MVP winner back-to-back-to-back. Jamal Murray looks even healthier now. Michael Porter Jr., I really think, has stepped up in his role as well. So I think if I had to pick a team to go to the finals right now from the West, I would have to say it would be the Nuggets. But the Kings, I think, are the most surprising team. You could say in the entire NBA. They're the 3rd seed in the West, and they're 16-11 at home. They're 7-3 in their last 10 games. So I'm kind of excited to see where they finish as the season winds down.
And that's something interesting. If you look across the entirety of the NBA, the only team with an exception of this is the Clippers, but pretty much every other team that I see, at least that are in playoff contention, they are incredible at home. It's really interesting to see that. I don't think I've ever seen that before, where we've seen this much of a home field advantage really in any sport.
Yeah, the home road splits this year in the NBA are taken way up another level. It's going to be interesting to see how that factors into the playoffs and how much home court advantage matters. I also wonder if teams are more likely to sit their stars on the road compared to at home, where their home season ticket holders are going to be spending money. So I wonder how much of players literally just getting rested has to do with the massive disparity you see in home and road record right now, because you mentioned it, Carl. It is nuts, the gap between how teams perform at home and on the road.
I mean, look at just the Grizzlies. The Grizzlies are 20-3 at home. That's insane.
Yeah, and I think that just makes it. I think that just makes the playoffs way more enticing, because now you're asking yourself, in a Game 7, or if a road team's facing elimination in a Game 6, how are they going to respond? Can they respond on the road? If they're so good at home, then and it's a do or die situation. Now you have to be able to do it on the road. So I just think it just ups the ante, if you will, in the playoffs a little bit more. And like you said, Michael, I agree. The whole home road splits are off the charts this season. I can't really remember it being this way, and that starts with the Warriors. Like you said, they're 18-6 at home, so you'd think they'd have one of the most dominant records in the league, but then you look at their road record, and they've only won a third of their road games so far this season. So it's going to wind down. It's going to be a great finish to the regular season for sure.
Very important news. Duquesne tightening safety protocols and security measures after Wednesday's food delivery stunt. So
good.
Just so we know, that's an update from ESPN, a legitimate story that they are tightening security measures at their game. So thank you, Duquesne.
I don't think they would have gotten into the convo.
They definitely would have gotten into the convo.
No, they would. Okay, it depends on where they would have came in. If you didn't hear about it last night, Duquesne, I don't even remember who they were playing that game.
Loyola Chicago,
that's what it was. 8-10 basketball. Duquesne had a stoppage during their game because an Uber Eats guy was on the court delivering McDonald's.
Like he went courtside.
Yes, he
walked
on the court.
into it. It was found out it was like a stunt. It was like a paid actor, dude.
That makes sense.
But yeah, he legit walked into the game and was like, "I'm just trying to deliver the food," and he was just causing a disturbance.
McDonald's though.
Yes, it was a McDonald's. He tried handing it right to the ref in the middle of the play, and the ref's like, "No, what are you doing?"
That's interesting.
It was certainly something, but we know obviously that wouldn't happen at Rocket Mortgage Arena. That's what they call it now, right?
Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse. Yeah, now it's the Q.
It's not the Q.
It's not
anymore.
the Q anymore. Yeah,
that's the shame. That's the shame of it. Dang rebranding. But how about the Cavs though? The Eastern Conference has looked really good. I know I chose the worst year to jump from being a 76ers fan to a Heat fan.
Great call on that one, Carl.
Yeah, I'm known for these great calls, Roth. But
I can't wait for you to leave Everton, pick a new team that gets relegated, and then Everton comes back.
Yeah, they'll actually be good after it. They'll probably get a new owner as soon as I'm still rooting for Everton.
Even if they get relegated?
Yes, I will follow a little bit of the champion. I just won't follow them as much.
Chelsea all the way, by the way.
Terrible.
No. But the Cavs currently sitting in 5th, and it's really interesting looking at the standings here. You got the Celtics up at the top. They've got a little bit of a gap there. 3 games back to the Sixers. 3.5 back to the Bucks in 3rd. Nets are 5 games back. Cavs are 6 games back. Heat are 8 games back. They're the play-in spots. Knicks at 9 games back. Hawks at 10 games back. Pacers at 11.5 games back. And the Bulls at 12 games back. And then you got the Wizards and Raptors kind of sitting around there. You've got the Magic 3.5 games out of the play-in spots. But what have you thought of the Eastern Conference and specifically where the Cavs fit in there?
Yeah, the Cavs have an ability to make a run. They've had pretty solid health so far this year. It hasn't been amazing. Some of their star players have missed games, but that's to be expected. In the NBA, they've been a little unlucky in close games, which is something that would be nice to see an improvement on towards the later part of the season. And I think if you're a Cavs fan, just the difference between being the 2nd and the 3rd seed versus being the 4th or the 5th seed is so big. Yeah. And I think it's clear that the Cavs are one of the 5 best teams in the Eastern Conference. It's just figuring out if they can be the 2nd or 3rd seed in the East or being the 4th or the 5th seed in the East. Because if you're the 4th or the 5th seed, you're likely going to be playing either Milwaukee, Philadelphia, or Brooklyn in the first round, where if you are the 2 or the 3 seed, you're likely going to be playing some form of Miami, the Knicks, or the Hawks in round 1, which is going to be a lot easier to advance past round 1, which I think has to be the Cavs' goal, winning a playoff series this year.
Yeah, and I've talked about this with other people as well. We were talking about this on Sports Beat, which is our local sports podcast at WOUB. And we were saying, kind of similar things. I think the Cavs have to at least get the 4 seed because they need to have home court advantage in the first round. Because the way the standings are right now, if the playoffs started today, the Cavs would be in Brooklyn for Game 1, taking on the Nets. So the Nets would have home court advantage. And I don't like the Cavs' chances in that one, especially if a healthy Kevin Durant comes back, the way Kyrie Irving's been playing.
And, you look at, once again, we talked about the home and road splits earlier. The Cavs are 20-5 at home and 9-15 on the road.
Yeah, and that is what concerns me, and that's why I do think, if we had a Game 7, it would have to be in Cleveland for the Cavs to have a chance, because I think this team is still as talented as they are. They're still young, and they need to learn how to win on the road. So if they want to have a chance this year, I think they still need home court advantage. And the way the Sixers look right now, Carl, they've won their last 6. You could argue they're the hottest team in the NBA right now, especially after their big win last night against Brooklyn. I think the East, the top 3 teams are the Celtics, the Sixers, and the Bucks. And then I think it's really the 4 seed to me is the one that's up for grabs. And I think if the Cavs can get that one and get home court advantage, then they have a shot for sure.
It'll definitely be interesting to see. One last thing before we go off the topic of the NBA. Looking back in the Western Conference, the Pelicans, we talked about obviously how the Sixers might be one of the hottest teams. The Pelicans, they looked incredible for the first bit. It looked like Zion was finally becoming that NBA star that we all thought he would be watching him in college, but suddenly they've lost 6 straight.
Zion's hurt. Correlation, yes.
Is it time to start panicking?
Well, Zion's supposed to come back in like 2 weeks, so probably not.
And I mean, Brandon Ingram came back yesterday against the Timberwolves, but to me, the Pelicans, it starts and stops with Zion. And I think when obviously he's not healthy, as Roth just pointed out, you're going to have a downward trend. But that's why their hot start was so vital, because they're still 26 and 23. So it's not the end of the road, but they need to start figuring it out now, especially now that they know that Zion Williamson's going to remain out. And that Western Conference is no joke. Even though a lot of the teams, and I even mentioned this on SportsBeat yesterday, the Western Conference isn't hard in terms of talent. I think, when you compare the East and the West, the East is definitely the superior conference just with better teams. But I do think if you lose your footing in the West, you're still going to be in a rough spot. And I think the Pelicans need to figure that out as soon as possible.
I mean, just look at the teams in the play-in right now in the Western Conference. You've got the Suns, the Timberwolves, the Warriors, and the Jazz. With the Mavericks and the Suns pretty much playing for that 7th spot tonight. I mean, that's having to go up against Steph Curry and then having to probably play against either I don't know who the Timberwolves have anymore, but I mean...
Carl Anthony Towns, Rudy Gobert,
right.
D'Angelo Russell. Yeah.
Obviously, the Suns.
Right.
I mean, that's a murderer's row. That's going to be a really tough thing, and that's where it makes the play-in kind of nice. The one form of playoff expansion that I haven't minded over the last few years.
Yeah, especially because you still have the same amount of teams in the rounds that matter.
Yeah. It's just kind of a little bit of extra steps and a little it kind of de-incentivizes tanking or being in that kind of whatever. It kind of rewards you for being in that kind of middle ground, while also, if you have a conference as good as what the Western Conference is, it gives opportunities to teams that, in the old format, if the playoffs started today, the Warriors wouldn't be in it.
Right.
So, I mean, I do enjoy.
Well, they would be in it because right now they're the 8th seed, but the Wolves wouldn't be in it.
They're 9th. They're tied with the Timberwolves.
Yeah, right.
Timberwolves have one more win, so 25-24. So at the moment they're technically 9th, but it's definitely going to be interesting to see how the rest of the season ends up.